middle of my junior year in college, I was in Matthews Hall, room 210. There's two aisles. I was on the right one, about halfway down, talking to two guys. And I glanced up, and I saw this girl walk in, and she was gorgeous. She looked like a Gap model. Back when that was really cool. And I asked the guys, I said, who is that? And they said, that's Jill. She's a freshman. See you later. And that began the pursuit of Jill. I got most of my dating advice from an intellect of our time, P. Abdul. And Paula said that opposites attract. And in our case, it really was the truth. One of our 2 steps forward was a mutual love of Neil Diamond. So let me fast forward 5 kids and 20-some years later. This year for Valentine's Day, I bought tickets to go see Neil Diamond in Indianapolis. So we go to Banker's Life to go see Neil Diamond. I'm totally stoked. There's like 400 or 500 people going through one set of doors. They're down to the sidewalk and around the corner. And we get there, and I look at this and go, this just doesn't make sense. Why do we have all these doors, yet 400 or 500 people are going through the same doors? We're not going to hear Cracklin' Rosie if we sit out here in this line. And so I said, Jill, come with me. Now, here's the decision I made. I made a decision to assume that 400 or 500 people were wrong. And I was going to show all of them that I thought they were wrong. And being a revolutionary takes risk. Being a revolutionary, you're more concerned with what's right than how you look or the potential outcomes. Things that annoy you or phrases like, well, that's just the way we've always done it. That's just the way business works. You go, I don't care. What's the right way to do it? So I said, come with me, and we walked up to the door, and the door opened. To my surprise, on the other side of the door was multiple security lines with 4 or 5 people working each one, all standing there with nothing to do, watching the crowd outside. Like, what the heck? So when do you know when a revolution's needed? Well, maybe in your industry, it's your last phase of the economic business cycle. So let's look at business cycles for a second. I'm going to use the example of a bicycle. So you invent a bicycle and say, look at the performance here. This is the first phase, performance. This gets you from here to there. You don't have to feed it, and it doesn't all over the roads. It's really cool. And then that sells for a long time, and then somebody else comes along and says, yeah, that performance is fantastic, but mine's more reliable. I use rubber tires so that when you hit potholes, they don't break. And I use a spoke and chain system, and then you sell a bunch of those. And then someone comes along and says, yeah, of course mine's performs, and mine's reliable, but mine's more convenient. That's the next phase. So the wheels are the same size, the tires are the same size. You don't need a ladder to get on it. Use hollow tube framing so that you can lift it up, and then you sell a bunch of bikes that way. And lastly, you get to the final phase, which is price. If someone comes along and says, of course mine performs, and it's reliable, and it's convenient, but mine's a lot cheaper. And that's the last phase of a market cycle. You may find yourself in the last phase of a market cycle. A couple caveats. One is Target figured out in the 90s that you could hire designers to tweak up mundane household items, and you could reset the market cycle. Then eventually, everybody had pretty toilet bowl cleaners, and so they're cheap again, and they're now competing on price. Another caveat would be is if the government's behind your institution that funds it, that people judge you on amenities. So think about hospitals. Which hospital do you want to go to? The newest one. The one that's got the newest stuff, the amenities, the buildings. Same thing with universities. People want to go where the buildings are the nicest. Why would anybody want to go to IU if it wasn't for their pretty buildings? Just throwing that out there. We don't have any sports at Purdue, so we have to crack on your buildings. Let me tell you about a real revolutionary. This is my friend Ralph. Ralph was born in India, and Ralph at a young age had a tragic turn in his story. At 3 years old, he lost his dad. His young mom, with no education, had 2 hungry boys to feed and no way to feed them. And through a series of events in Providence, she ended up working as a janitor in an exclusive private Christian school in India, which gave them a roof, it gave them food, and eventually gave Ralph and his brother a means to get a really good education. From there, Ralph went on to the university to major in some nerdy engineering thing. And he was so good at that, he ended up in the United States for graduate school. And after graduate school, he went to go work for an international telecommunications company. And he was on the fast track. And he would send some of his earnings back to his family in India. His uncle ran an orphanage for little girls over there. And he would send some money back. And right at the time Ralph was looking at a major promotion to oversee several countries, his uncle died. And they were looking for somebody to run this orphanage. He was living out the dream. Great education, great job, making a lot of money. And one day he woke up and felt the call to go back to India and to take over the orphanage. So he went back to India, and he put his nerdy engineering brain cap on, and he decided to put a spreadsheet together that said, let's track all the orphans, when they came and when they left and what they're doing now. And he discovered a very disturbing trend. He found that they were getting little girls and that they would raise these orphans, and at about 14 years old, family would show up. Family that hadn't been heard from in years and years. And they had, just the right groom for her, and they were going to get her married at 14 years old. And their little orphan girls would end up marrying alcoholics and abusers and creepers, unemployed guys, the uncle that gives you the creeps at the holiday party. That's who they were getting married to. And he said, this doesn't make sense. And so he used empathy, and he said, what do these orphan girls need more than anything else? Orphans need not be orphans. And so he put the lens on and said, these are no longer orphans, they're my daughters. Orphans and daughters are treated very differently. My two youngest used to be orphans. And when they got out of the van in Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo, they came across the parking lot, and we picked them up. They stopped being orphans. And they became sons and daughters. Orphans are entitled to maybe 2 meals a day. Orphans all dress the same. Maybe they have clothes, maybe they don't. Orphans go to public schools. Orphans share a lot of things. They really don't own anything. Sons and daughters, they have a unique style. They go to the best schools. They go on to university. They have birthday parties. They play musical instruments. They laugh. They learn stories. They're attached to something. Ralph's revolutionizing orphan care by seeing his little girls through the lens of daughters. And the decisions they make for their daughters are the same ones that we make for our children. 100% of his girls now go to the university. And not like the fake university, like the real smart people university with real degrees. And they come out, and what's happening is he's changing the world of orphan care with that one simple question and using empathy to say, what would it look like if we saw it this way? And he believed that the way orphan care was being done worldwide was wrong. And he staked his career on it. Let me tell you about another revolutionary. Amazon. Amazon started out selling books online, but they did something absolutely revolutionary. They power graded. They took power from those that had it and gave it to those that did not have it. Back when I was young, if you wanted to buy something, you would subscribe to a magazine or a service that would tell you what the experts thought of that, and that's how you would purchase things. And you would rely on experts to tell you what to do. And today, you rely on your peers. If you need a plumber or electrician, what do? You get on social media and say, hey, who knows a good plumber or electrician? When you go to buy a book, you look at peer reviews. And they've changed the way that we buy things. So how do you know if this is working, if the revolution's sticking? You have copiers. Who doesn't do this now? Everybody does. The experts aren't needed. You go to a website, there's always peer reviews. Everyone has it. It's a gift now. It's a revolution the way we do things. Ralph enjoys an influence that's becoming worldwide, that there's orphanages all over the world coming to India to say, tell us how you're doing it. He says, we just raise our daughters as our own. And we make decisions for our daughters. And it was fantastic, the impact that he's having on lives, and it's breaking the cycle of orphan care. When I opened that door, and I could feel people, you could hear the grumbling on the way up to the door to go see Neil Diamond. You could feel kind of the daggers, people rooting against you, hoping that the door would be locked so they could mock you all the way back to the end of the line. And it would have been a cold night if Jill and I would have been mocked through that whole way. When we walked through that door, the crowd dissipated and everybody followed. They joined in. So I'm asking you in your life, what's something that doesn't make sense? What's something where the crowd's wrong? Where can you show empathy? Where can you power grade and lead a revolution? I'm asking you to take courage, my friends, and walk through unopened doors.